Welcome and great to have you join us as we go off script with Sam Monk, Senior Leader of Equippers Church. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hi, welcome to Off Script with Sam Monk. We talk about what's worked, what hasn't, and leadership lessons. And today, Sam, I want to talk about ceilings. Now, this is not to appeal to a new tradie audience. I'm not talking about jibboard and things of that nature. But really ceilings, I guess, in ministry and work and life. Give us a kind of a understanding of how ceilings can, I guess, impact us.
Yeah, well, I think we've all hit a wall or hit a ceiling. It's just where you're working hard, you're putting in the effort, but you feel like you're not getting any traction. It's like the wheels are spinning, but you're not moving forward. And I think in life, there's times and seasons where we do hit ceiling, we hit walls, and we're going, what's going on? And it brings a level of frustration and even anxiety around that. It's just like, oh man, what am I doing wrong? It seemed like in the last season I was doing the same thing and I was getting results. Now I'm doing it and it's like, it's not working any longer.
And I suppose that can play on us, can't you? Even in leadership in general, because you start getting a bit insecure about thinking, is it me? Is it the situation? You can start blaming other things, but there's some real principles here about hitting ceilings and what you can do to navigate through that, eh?
Yeah, well, it's just what do you do when you hit a ceiling,
right,
and what needs to shift and what needs to change.
What about even recognizing ceilings though?
Yeah, well, sometimes we can just think, I'm frustrated, and we can blame our external environment without recognizing that we've hit our limit in ourselves and something needs to shift within us. And, when it comes to leadership, I think the first place we look is the mirror, because ultimately what we're leading does take on. It does become a reflection of you to a degree, and unless you're growing, unless you're moving forward, there's a high chance that what you're leading will sometime, if you're not growing, it will find a ceiling or hit a wall, and won't really move forward. And
frustrations can build, and like you talked about, you can sort of camp at things. Things that you might have thought were okay back in the day, you're now realizing, man, I've actually accepted a whole bunch of things that I never thought that I would be accepting now. So there's a real frustration, eh?
Yeah, well, it's just like in church life, we get to a point where we accept not seeing anyone saved on a Sunday. We accept not seeing healings, miracles. We accept not seeing the reproduction of new leaders or the reproducing of new leaders. We accept a whole lot of things that, we just, in our heart, when we started off, we saw those things, but now we just tolerate them not happening.
And I suppose there's a danger we can sort of change our theology. Oh, well, it happened in Jesus' time, and maybe these things don't happen today. You hear some stuff out there that's like, what?
Yeah. And we just camp out at a level, and that's where we need to say, hey, things need to change. There needs to come a shift. And
so we've got to confront some things. Eh?
Yeah. And shifting, I think we've all moved house at some point in time, and moving house is a mission. In fact, just the thought of it makes people throw up in their mouth. It's just like, the work.
Yeah.
And so often it's like, I don't want to move because of all the work it's going to take to move. And we just go, maybe it's just comfortable staying where we are. And I think that can happen in leadership and it can happen in life. It's just like, shifting, just the thought of it, is just too much. But here's some good things about shifting is when you shift, number one is you realize how much junk you accumulate.
You never thought you were a hoarder until you shift. Eh?
Yeah. And it's like, you go, why the heck am I holding on to this? It's like people holding on to their university notes or high school notes, thinking, I might need to refer back to those at some point in time. But there's a high chance, a real high chance that you'll never go back to those ever again.
Right now there's a whole bunch of people listening going, don't go there.
Yeah, it's just like that whole thing. And we hold on to it, or thinking, I just might need that at some point. But it's amazing what you throw away and you forget about and you never go back to.
Yeah.
And moving gives you the opportunity to get rid of a whole lot of rubbish. But also when you move, you find stuff that you forgot you had. It was with you all along, but you forgot you had it. It's like, man, I need that right now. That's awesome. I forgot we had that. Yeah. And it's awesome. But the other thing about moving is you often going into a new space, which then allows you to go out and purchase some new stuff. True. And I think, in the process of shifting, three things. You get to get rid of your crap. You find stuff that you forgot you had. There's things right now that God's done in people's lives that people have forgotten about. But in reflection, if you go back to that, you go, that's going to give you the strength and courage to actually make the move now.
Yeah, right.
And then also, hey, you're moving into a new space, and any new space, you create the room. God will fill that room. He'll furnish that room, and help you move forward. But when it comes to hitting walls, to me, the first place when you hit a wall that needs to move, where there needs to be a shift, I believe, is prayer.
Prayer, yep.
Yeah, prayer's a big thing. Nothing changes without...
Not a new thing as well, is it? Not a new thought?
Not a new thought. Prayer, yeah. Welcome to our podcast. You're wanting a new thought?
You're not going to find it here.
The latest, greatest idea is not coming from Off Script with Sam Monk. But it's taking us back to some of the foundational basic things, which is prayer. But where we need to shift is we probably need a shift in our prayer life, because that can become stuck where, we're petitioning God, but we're not engaging our hearts. A lot of people's prayer life is just a list of requests or a list of frustrations or what are you doing, God? And I think prayer lives get stuck sometimes in first gear when it just becomes, about our request. It's just like, first gear. Let's face it, real driving is when you can drive a manual.
Preach that, man. Yeah. Come on.
Otherwise, people just know how to drive a go-kart.
Yeah, that's right.
But real driving is when you learn how to drive that. And our prayer lives are just, we're praying, but it's out of duty. I find your prayer life goes to another level when you engage your imagination.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, when you engage it and you start dreaming with God. You dream about what the future can look like, and through worship, that's where worship aligns our focus. It brings everything into perspective. It gives us a greater revelation of who Jesus is. And so often when we hit walls, we go straight to programs, but the first place we need to go to is prayer.
Yeah, that's good.
And so if we hit a wall, I'm always asking myself, okay, how do I need to go change gear in my prayer world?
Yeah.
Because if anything's going to be lasting, its foundation is found in prayer.
Yeah.
So prayer is a big part. But then, so we need to see a prayer shift, which then I find when you have a prayer shift, it leads to a paradigm shift.
So talk about a paradigm shift. Like what, the word's used a lot, especially in leadership context, but what is it? What is a paradigm shift?
A paradigm shift is when we see from a different perspective.
Right, okay.
We don't see with our eyes, we see through our eyes. And we often view them through our past. We view the future through, previous experience, what we know.
Yep.
And so something needs to shift, in our paradigm for us to really move forward, because often we've been operating on a paradigm of thought, a paradigm, a way of looking at things for a certain amount of time. And it's almost like we've done that and we've peaked out.
Yeah.
We've maximized that.
Yeah.
Now, for us to go to a new level, we need a new paradigm of thought.
Right.
A new paradigm, a new way of looking at things. And, that builds upon past paradigms, but it's different. It's like Peter up on the roof in prayer. Good Jewish boy saw these images that he thought were unclean, and God had to say to him, don't call that which I've made clean, don't call them unclean.
Yeah.
And that led to the church branching out, expanding into the Gentile world.
And in the context of that day, that was radical.
Radical. Yeah.
In the face of Jewish custom and law that's been there for centuries. And then, so the paradigm shift it's a major thing, isn't it? Like, it's like it's almost beyond, we talk about these aha moments, but it's the sense of, oh my God, this is such a new thing.
Yeah, well, and you can't force a paradigm shift. I'm going to have a paradigm shift. I'm just going to be more intense.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, it's only God who can open our eyes. And I like what Jesus said, where he said, I've come to give sight to the blind and to tell those who think they can see, they're blind. And so often we think we can see. But if we think we can see, we're blind. And that's where in prayer we need to go, God, I need you to open my eyes.
Yeah.
Because the reason why in a lot of places we hit walls and ceilings is because we're looking at things from the wrong perspective. We're looking at it wrong. And it's like God wants to open our eyes to something new. And so it starts with a prayer shift, a shift in prayer, engaging your imagination. God, anoint my mind.
Yeah.
It's coming to a place of confidence where we can access the mind of Christ.
Yeah.
But then that leads to a paradigm shift, which then will bring about a priority shift.
Right.
Notice
now
all these things start with P.
Really easy to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and that, the whole thought on that is, in the clarity of vision, your priorities become obvious.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
If you don't have clear vision or a clarity when it comes to the way that you look at things, how do you know?
Well, because the opposite's the same. Like, okay, what are you going to do next? What are you going to prioritize? Well, the question should be, well, where are we going?
Yeah,
and then I'll know what I've got to prioritize. But if I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm going to do first.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's the classic statement of managers do things right, but leaders do the right thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing things right, but they're not prioritizing what needs to be prioritized for things to really move forward and for you to break through the ceiling that you're up against, or the wall that you're beating, you're continually confronting.
Yeah. Because like we talked about in the previous couple of episodes, we're not lacking the amount of things that we could do.
Yeah.
We could do a lot of things, but priorities are really important, aren't they? Because they often tell us, once we know where we're going, well, we've just got to kind of do the next thing.
Yeah.
And then the next thing. And the priorities they shift into line. But I sometimes think the most stressful part is thinking, when there's so many things around, and you come in like a Monday morning, you're like, man, we've got a big week coming up or a big month coming up. But priorities help you just to kind of, it brings a sense of calm, doesn't it? Like, I just got to breathe. I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And I know where I've got to put and invest my time. And I think in leadership, you've got to know, time is your only, it's the one thing that keeps counting down once you're born, isn't it? And it's one finite resource that we have. So the priority thing is really important.
Yeah, priorities really reflect your values.
Right.
And when it comes to breaking through ceilings, either we value our comfort, or we value the mission, and the mission and what God's called us to has got to go far and beyond our personal comfort levels.
Well, it's not a comfortable gospel, I think, is it? You wouldn't say the gospel is like, oh, sweet, man, this is,
Yeah. And so that, you only can make a priority shift in the light of revelation and clarity of vision, which comes about from having an aha moment, and having an epiphany, a paradigm shift. And so that comes off the back of prayer, because it's only God who can open our eyes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Because otherwise, I guess to finish off this point, if we're not clear on where we're going, we end up we can chase a lot of, we can chase. What's what I'm trying to say? Chase things in a lot of directions. We can go in one of 50 different ways, and then get so far down that point, realizing we're chasing the wrong things. Like, we need to come back to actually what's our purpose, what's our vision, what's our being really clear on those things. Otherwise, you just waste a lot of time.
And what people tend to do is they look at somebody else who's successful, and they think, that's their priorities, and then they import their priorities. But you got to answer the question: what has God called you to? Right. Because it's only in the light of that your priorities become really clear, and that comes back to your values as well. Yeah. What's your values? Because
even in your own personal life, this plays out not just in church or in business or whatever, but in your own personal life. You've got to prioritize relationships. You've got to prioritize your time. You've got to prioritize where you spend your money and you invest and you do these things. And
which then, so we start with prayer, and that leads to a paradigm shift, which then leads to a priority shift, which then brings about a program shift. Then
so now we get to program.
Now we can we start with program, but what we're doing is we're just tinkering, or we're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It's just like, what's the latest church program? Because we need to break through, and what are they doing that's successful? Let's just import that and do that. But we haven't addressed the real issue of what is capping us and what is sealing us. And then once you've got a priority, programs just serve vision. Programs and structures, they serve vision. We don't serve programs. And a lot of people, I think, are scared to actually let some programs die. Some programs have served their purpose, their season, And the hardest thing in leadership is actually not starting something; it's actually stopping.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, you get, what?
It causes a lot of angst for people. A lot of people are like, we've done this forever. How dare you take this thing away from us? But we've got to. But things have to produce fruit. We've got to.
Yeah.
Again, otherwise we maybe hit ceilings because we're not prepared to possibly confront or to, or to be comfortable. I mean, these things are not comfortable decisions to make, are they?
No, they're not comfortable. And stopping something is like, that's when you're going to get a backlash if you're going to get any. But the question is it serving its purpose? Is it really leading us forward? And many people end up serving programs rather than, asking themselves, is this fulfilling purpose? And programs are just there to serve.
But I love that you've put that directly after priorities, because that, all of a sudden, even as you talk about it, that makes sense. Okay, we've prayed. Okay, God, we've got a clear vision. We've had this massive paradigm shift now.
Yep.
Okay, now we've aligned our priorities. So then it's about let's do this program now because we've sorted those other things out.
Yep.
Like that actually makes sense in your head now.
Yeah, and you got the background revelation to why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly, yeah. So it's easy when people says, what are you doing? You're like, because of these things.
Yeah.
We've got our priorities. And they go, that makes sense now that you would be doing that, running that event or doing this program or running that course or whatever.
That's it, and that's it. And then what it leads to, so we start with prayer, paradigm, we're going through all these again, and which then leads to a paradigm priority shift, which leads to a program shift, which brings about the last one, which is a performance shift.
Oh, cool.
And the way I like to think of it is when you're working hard, you want to get results.
Yep, you do.
Let's face it, we all want to get results.
Do.
But I love with God's grace is we get greater results than the effort that we're putting in. And the picture I get is like in an airport, those places that we haven't been to for a long time.
Yeah, what are those? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like where there's a travelator.
Yeah.
And you jump on the travelator and somebody else who's not on the travelator is walking beside you. They're walking, putting in the same energy, but you're going faster.
Yeah, that's a great thought.
And further than them.
Yeah.
And I just believe when you have the background of prayer, paradigm shift, all these things, suddenly it's like, okay, we can break through the ceiling.
Yeah.
We can, really go to another level. Is because we've got all the back end of this taking place, and to me that's where I've found. I go back whenever I'm hitting a ceiling. First place, prayer.
Yeah,
prayer is in God, because without Him we can't do anything.
Yeah,
and John 15 talks about this. Sometimes we think, we can do some stuff, but without Him, it's what are we doing?
Nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some great thoughts. Thank you, Sam. Great thoughts. I'm looking forward to smashing through some ceilings in every area of life. But otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching this week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Off Script with Sam Monk. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure you pass it on. We love your feedback, so drop us a line about what topics you'd like to hear about on Off Script with Sam Monk.